Welcome back to episode 15 of the Delve podcast. I'm Allie. I'm a staff therapist here at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
And I'm Adam. I'm the executive and clinical director at Delft Psychotherapy of Chicago.
Help us spread the word. We're not trying for fame here with this podcast. We don't plan to run any ads, so it's very listener friendly. So word of mouth is really important. So if you find value in our podcasts, share it with someone. Help us spread the word. It would be really helpful.
Yeah, even just one other person would be great. And I agree. We're not trying for fame. We're just trying to be helpful. So we'd love if people gave it a listen.
Yeah. Here at Delve Psych, we offer individual, couples, group, and family therapy. If you're interested, reach out for a consultation at delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. We also have a Substack where we write all these awesome blog posts. That's at delvepsych.substack.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, it's New Student Day at Delft.
New student day. You're getting new interns in. Yay! I'm excited to meet them.
I am too. That's legitimately immediately after we're done recording, we start to bring them on board. It's one of my absolute favorite days of the year to bring in the next generation of therapists. And something I guess we haven't said on the podcast is that part of Delve's model is that when we take in brand new students, they are truly brand new. They have never done therapy a day in their life in the vast majority of cases. So their first session is truly their first session ever. And we do that on purpose. We've always had the ambition to try to help people start to learn the profession right from day one and make their first training experience as useful and inviting as possible. So here we go.
Here we go. Yeah, I went through Delve's training program and I really loved it. I thought I learned so much. I got so much value out of it, and I just I can't even express how grateful I am to have had that internship experience, because I know some of my other colleagues in my cohort at school weren't as lucky with their internship experience. So I just want to vouch for Delve's program. It's really great, and it's clear that you guys care so much about teaching new clinicians. So, anyways.
Well, you're one of those teachers now. So part of our program is that we have former trainees or provisionally licensed folks or people that are trying to learn how to do supervision. They provide an additional hour of supplemental supervision. So that actually starts for you this week. Having been a former intern, now you will begin the teaching process too.
Yes, that's exciting.
Ain't it though?
It is, yeah. Oh man, it goes so fast. When you're in it, it's oh my God, am I ever gonna graduate? And then it's am I ever gonna? Right now, I'm am I gonna get my license? But it flies by, really.
Yeah, the future often can seem long and the past so short.
Yeah. So today it's time for more Reddit questions.
All my favorite things today. New students, Reddit questions. Here we go.
Here we go. Okay. Let's see. Which one do I want to go with first? Let's do this one. It's titled Scared of Being Alone and Scared of Being in a Relationship. Okay. I feel like I'm constantly going back and forth between wanting to be in a relationship and not wanting to be. And it's become a problem when I've actually gotten into a relationship. It sounds so strange, but I keep falling for people I can't have. And then when they end up liking me, I start to lose the feeling for them. I really want to date them, and sometimes I try to push through this, but it ends up coming apart as I'm slowly repulsed by them. They're pretty decent people I've been with. Not too many problems, except I start to freak out when I think of being with somebody for a long time and start to lose feelings as a result. Some part of me has accepted I might just be alone for a long time because it's easier, but another part of me wants to give it another chance. I just don't know if I can hold on to feelings for somebody in a relationship.
This one stepped on several of my. It makes me want to step on several of my soapboxes, which I know I have many soapboxes. So um, did, did this individual indicate their age, gender identity, anything of that nature?
No, they did not.
It's not entirely relevant, but it's interesting because I
Mhm.
tend to think that this way of thinking about relationships tends to be a younger thing, but not exclusively.
Yeah.
Um, and um, we need a kind of a complete rewiring of how we think about relationships. I think as a society, but also certainly from this perspective. So um, the language that's getting used is really telling here. A thing that I've been criticized as a therapist for many a times has been that I nitpick language, but I nitpick language because I think it is the closest approximation we have to the way that we are thinking about the world, right? That's what language is. This is my perspective. This is my want. This is my need. This is my desire. This is my ask, whatever it is. And language is our best chance at getting at our internal understanding,
Mhm.
or for an outsider to understand what's happening on the inside for somebody else. It's the only conduit we have, truly. Um, the language can betray our motivations, our mentalities, etc. So even a line like "who we fall for" suggests a way of thinking about relationships that our feelings happen to us,
Mm.
that we fall. We weren't trying to fall, we just did. It just happened. And the fates or the other outside forces created this experience for me. I fall or I don't fall. That also is shown in this kind of mentality of how do I hang on to the feelings, which is interesting, right? Because a minute ago we had no control over the feelings, but now all of a sudden we're trying to control the feelings. Or they're an external force, even though they live in our brain. They're an external force that I have no control over. Oh, I lost feelings. I had them, and then they're gone.
Right.
And where did they go? I can't hang on to them. They just do what they're going to do, and I am a passive recipient. There are parts of that that are true, but there are parts of that that are irrelevant as well.
To me, there's avoidant attachment going on in this person's Reddit post. This idea of wanting connection, craving that, having feelings for certain individuals and pursuing dating them. But once the relationship actually comes to fruition, and it seems like they said, like, these people are decent people, there's no problems in the relationship, things seem to be going well, then they freak out. And they're like, oh, I don't have feelings anymore, I've lost interest, I'd I'm pushing them away, essentially. So that's my first impression of what's going on here with this Redditor.
I agree. I completely agree. And I think that the mechanics of avoidant attachment really have a lot to do with that discomfort with certain feelings, especially intimacy, but also expectation and the feelings of a threat to one's independence, or really that ends up being kind of an interpretation.
Mhm.
And perhaps we should give a little bit of a guide on um, I guess we have three things here. We should probably talk about what avoidant attachment is and how it works.
Mhm.
We should probably talk about um, a better way to think about feelings, um, and then a better way to think about matches. I think
Okay.
that how do we feel about that enumeration, Allie?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I think that covers the bases here.
Okay, where do you want to start?
Let's start with attachment, because I feel like that to me is the most blaring thing that's going on, at least for me, in this question.
Yeah. Do you want to take lead?
Sure. So attachment styles. So a lot of our attachment styles are formed in these sort of like formative, very young years. And it's based on mainly how we bond or don't bond with our main caregivers. What we get from them, what we don't get from them. And so that sort of permeates into our dating when we're older. So the different main attachment styles are avoidant, anxious, and secure. Adam, you want to elaborate?
Absolutely. Yeah, and a great explanation so far, for sure. This was came out of Bowlby and later Ainsworth's research. Two of the strongest researchers, I think, in the history of all of psychology. One of the most robust theories in the history of psychology. So we know about secure attachment. Essentially, when there is a threat to the relationship, it's handled proportionately. But if there is no threat, then there is no major kind of feeling of threat.
Yeah.
Essentially, we're calibrated in the degree to which we perceive threats and react to threats. So the secure attachment style is going to accurately perceive threats and accurately and proportionally respond to them. So being away from your partner is not a problem. I'm thinking in the dating context now. Being if it was a child, it'd be being away from a parent. But being away from a parent or being away from a partner isn't a problem by itself.
Right.
A fear that we may permanently be parted from our partner could develop a bit of a reaction in somebody with a secure attachment style. It's not that people with secure attachment never have any emotion, never have any fears. It's that they're proportionate. If a romantic partner goes off to war, yes, you worry. And you may even feel some attachment anxieties, but that is not an insecure attachment style. They're at war. Alternatively, there are two insecure attachment styles. Technically three, but the last one is really rare. But the two popular ones, sure, we'll go with popular. The two common ones is
Sure.
anxious and avoidant.
Mhm.
An anxious attachment style tends to experience the greatest anxiety when there's distance in the relationship. If you are away, I am scared. And there's going to tend to be a lot of intense thinking and a lot of intense analyzing, but also a lot of goal-directed behavior toward closeness. I want to be close. I want to be together. Why can't we just spend more time together? And then that's the kind of primary motivation, is generally toward closeness. Avoidant attachment style is tricky because it seems on the surface, as you're pointing out here, like I want to be away. I just want to be away from the other person. So if you've ever seen somebody in a relationship and they don't really seem to like their partner, but they've been with them for a long time, or they don't seem to have a lot of lovey feelings or responses to their partner, but they've been with them for a long time, or they tend to avoid their partner or anything of that nature, that's going to be more of the avoidant attachment style. But as this Reddit questioner indicates, it's not that they don't want relationship. It's not that they don't have feelings. It's not that they aren't interested in connection. It's that they start to feel threatened when it is close. Intimacy is extremely scary. And threats to independence are exceptionally terrifying. So they're far more likely to, with any of these feelings, especially with any expectation placed on them, to withdraw. And so that's why, some number of months after the beginning of a relationship, stuff starts to get real. We have our first fight. We experience our first set of distance. The relationship just turns blasé, banal, whatever. Like sometimes it's Thursday, and we're just there. And you learn that a relationship isn't magical. It's not wondrous. It's not, bunnies jumping through meadows all the time. Often it's, I come home, I'm tired, we have some dinner, we don't talk a lot. one of us farts, and then like you go to, you go to bed, and like sometimes that's your relationship. It gets worse than that. Sometimes you fight with your partner, and you kind of end up experiencing a lot of the uncomfortable and even maybe angry feelings toward them, or the distance feelings towards them. One of the best marriages I know of, it's not an easy one. Like the individuals in this partnership can be challenging individuals, and I'm sure they would agree. But they make their marriage work really effectively. And one of them told me sometime recently, there are days I just fucking hate my husband. They are happily married.
Right.
Right. And so if you go into these relationships with those fears of intimacy, with those fears of independence, or with those fears of losing your independence, I should say, if you go into a relationship with those fears in place, then as challenges come, you'll withdraw. And that has nothing to do with the other person. They're just stimulus.
Right. I think one nugget that I really liked that I took from dating group that you said was like, when you're in a relationship, you're going to feel like every single emotion towards your partner. It's not just going to be loving, romantic, happy feelings. Like you're gonna be pissed at them. You're gonna be disgusted by them. You're gonna, all the not so pretty feelings you're gonna feel towards them at any given time. And so to not freak out so much if you feel anything other than I'm so in love.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you're not dating the first date version of them that had, cologne on and their hair freshly cut and they were on their best behavior. You're dating the year 16 version of them that has pink eye, like we got to deal with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think too, I kind of want to touch on like perhaps where avoidant attachment comes from, because I mentioned like a lot of these things are kind of formed out of our experience with our caregivers. For avoidant attachment, it's like this baby or child experienced often neglect from the parent. So maybe the child is crying and the parent doesn't come to comfort them. So they learn that when they're upset, when they're in distress, no one's coming for them. So I would be, in working with this client, I would be interested in taking a psychodynamic perspective, which is one of the domains we talked about, looking at the history of this person, looking into their childhood and what their experiences was as a little kid with their parents. I'd be interested to see where some of these ideas on like love and relationships and caregivers, where that stems from. So
I think that's mostly right. I will disagree slightly in that, or maybe I'll add nuance. Maybe I'm not disagreeing, but I'll add nuance, which is that I think sometimes, and maybe even often, the parent-child relationship ends up creating a similar typology in romantic attachments. But if I remember right, and this is just from memory, and I'm not going to be able to cite something, so if anybody doubts me, it's fair game to doubt me on this. But I think it's something like maybe only about 2/3 of the time is that what actually happens. And about the other third of the time, it's something along the lines of some other form of attachment in your romantic partnerships. But I think that the idea of a person having an attachment style is the wrong way to think about it in general. I think what we're dealing with instead is more that instead of an attachment being a trait that is attached to a person that is stable through time and place and relationship, as if like it's my height and I could put it on my driver's license. I have an anxious attachment on my driver's license. I think they are tendencies, and I think their stances in a relationship, and specifically that in a particular relationship, I will end up in a particular stance. I'm aware of many clients. The more I've done this, the more I've seen this. I'm aware of clients that I've seen, sort of in multiple different romantic attachments over time. And typically, if they are fairly secure and they had that secure attachment in childhood, they'll tend to be fairly secure in most of their romantic attachments. But it is possible to make them insecure. And also if they experienced trauma somewhere along the way, that can often make them insecure.
Mm-hmm.
But the specific bond with the specific person is really what drives how we end up approaching them. What I'll say is that people who tend toward one of the insecure relationships will tend to pick one of the insecure relationships in any given partnership. And that can mean that sometimes they take the anxious role and sometimes they take the avoidant role. So the way that I tend to think about it is whoever tends to be more avoidant overall is probably going to stay avoidant, and the other person will pick anxious. So you take two people that tend to have an avoidant attachment style. If they happen to get together, which there's some evidence that it almost never happens. If people are really at the extremes of avoidance, they basically never connect, because who would text? So you would just avoid the other person.
Right. Or just wouldn't be a relationship. They're just
right. Nobody follows up. But if they do bond, my prediction would be that one of them would turn to the anxious side. And that's where you get those kind of layperson notions of there's a chaser and a chasee. Not always. In secure relationships, that doesn't happen. But you can end up in what's called the anxious avoidant trap, where an anxious person chases an avoidant person. And those can go on for years and years and years.
So I just want to kind of summarize what you're saying here in the sense of basically, we're not always the same of attachment style with every single relationship that we encounter. It can be more fluid than that. It's not like an identity sort of thing.
Yes.
But would it be fair to say that like people are sort of do tend to lean towards a certain type in general?
I think that's an excellent research question, Allie. I'm actually going to Google something really quickly. Google Scholar something. Okay, I've got a paper from the 90s. It'll be interesting to get something of the historical perspective. And then let's see if we can get something newer.
I love how the 90s are a historical perspective now. I mean, a lot has happened since then, so.
30 years?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Okay, we've got an article here. Do life events lead to enduring changes in adult attachment styles and naturalistic longitudinal investigation? That's a 2021 article from Fraley and colleagues. That's interesting. So there's by the way, I should talk a little bit about how to find an article. One, I think that the AI, the fact that AI has now come online means that you can often find articles a little bit easier, but you're more likely to end up engaging in confirmation bias if you ask, let's say, a AI model, an LMM, a general question to get particular articles back. You're going to get the articles that align with the framing of your question if it doesn't hallucinate and just make up an article. But in general, the idea is once you get on a kind of line of inquiry, which in this case would be something along the lines of the stability of attachment styles. Once you get on a line of inquiry, typically everyone in this field is trying to find all of the relevant articles that they could possibly cite about that particular topic. So once you're locked into the topic, you can get anything from the past that's particularly relevant in their own reference section. So there's your history. So from 1994 backward in time, if I start with this Kirkpatrick and Davis article, I could look at their reference section and get everything that's relevant from back in time. Let's say they didn't cite something. I should also be looking at the reference section for whatever article that they cite. So Kirkpatrick and Davis cite somebody in 1992. I should look backward in time at that article and look at their reference section and figure out which articles are missing and just go and collect. That's a way to get the historical information from 1994 and backward. The way that I always taught my students to do it moving forward was to use the cited by function within Google Scholar. So now you've got every article that has ever cited Fitzpatrick and Davis 1994 moving forward in time.
Wow.
So once you get any article that's on the path, you can move both forward and backward in time. And then if you're citing by any of those relevant articles moving forward in time, then you've got your complete research profile or literature review. That's what I mean to say. That's just a little hint on how to do a lit search. Unfortunately, I only have an abstract for this one. Oh man, it's gendered. So at least according to Fitzpatrick and Davis, with all the biases of gender that were around in the 90s and probably still persist today, the relationships of avoidant men and anxious women were surprisingly stable over 3 years. That's a pretty short period of time for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to do a longitudinal study longer than that. You need a lot of money and you'll lose a lot of people. So then that introduces a bunch of bias.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I do think that the stereotype of the avoidant man and the stereotype of the anxious woman is something that I have seen show up in the empirical literature in the past. But again, I just think it's more useful for us to think of these things as general trends rather than as traits attached to the person. And also, these things can change. The way that we approach relationships can change. I want to take a look at this Fraley and colleagues article quickly. What do I have here? What was this published in? However, on average, people tended to revert back to levels of security similar to those that would be expected on the basis of their pre-event trajectories. So essentially, they're suggesting that there was incredible stability despite these major events, which again, I'm perusing here. I haven't dug into how they measured all of that. So it's interesting. It sounds like the answer to your question is sorta, and maybe even yes, maybe even pretty much. I think that it's still useful to view it as a thing that I am doing rather than a thing that I am, because then I can do something about it as I'm trying to engage change. But I suppose Adam's going to concede the point a bit.
Well, no, that to me makes sense. Just like changing the language of like, because when you identify with a certain attachment, I can imagine it almost becomes like a fallback. Well, that's just the way I am, and then it might be harder to make change if you want to make change in your relationship or whatever, because you identify so strongly with it. Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of the mentality we should have within the world of psychotherapy, we should think of these as mutable. But it is always interesting to engage the much more empirical question, which is, but what actually happens? And I confess that about half of my brain now wants to do a much deeper literature search. But we don't have time for that. Let's keep talking. We do not have time. So Adam, in the way of attachment, if this client was sitting before you in session, how might you work with them?
So that gets into how do we talk about feelings and how do we talk about matches? So I think at the core of attachment style dynamics is the way that we engage our own emotionality. And again, there's that kind of mentality that I was mentioning earlier, that these feelings provide me some truth about the world. They're also a thing that happens to me. They're a thing that I need to cling on to. I think that's the wrong way to think about the feelings too. Again, in a psychotherapy sense, if we're thinking about trying to create change. Your feelings cannot reveal truths about the outside world. They're not in the outside world. They're inside your skull. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one of the misconceptions of the whole dating landscape right now is I go on a date and I do or I don't feel something represents a pretty profound misunderstanding about the way that feelings themselves work. I highly encourage checking out Lisa Burnett's work, but we could also look at a number of studies that have suggested that subtle changes in one's environment can profoundly change their emotions. And sometime we may want to do something of the didactic on like what emotions actually are. It's complicated as hell, though. It's one of the more dense didactics that I give. I will say that in the let me find the name of this bridge experiment. Okay, this is a phenomenon called the misattribution of arousal, and it was the Capilano suspension bridge experiment. All right, so in that particular study, they found that they could essentially, if you scare someone enough, if you put them in a tense enough, nervousness enough environment, and then you presented them with something that hypothetically could seem like a romantic opportunity, they would tend to take it much more often if they were experiencing that fear first. I will note that this was almost all young male-identified individuals in their particular study, but nevertheless, what they found with respect to the attribution of arousal, like what's happening within me and what do I think it is? If I was able to scare you in the right kinds of ways, and I also then present something like a romantic opportunity to you, I can get you to engage in more romantic behavior. I can dig into the details of that study at some point if we'd like, but the misattribution of arousal is a pretty well-known phenomenon. But let's think about those dynamics. Fear and romantic opportunity. What's happening on a first date?
Fear and romantic opportunity.
So often we go into these first dates, we're a little scared, we're a little nervous, and the other person is attractive, assuming we've seen them before in some context, right? So the other person's attractive and I'm scared. And so people can start to get what they call butterflies, which is probably just a misattribution of their own anxieties. And then they just get imprinted on the other person.
Yeah, no, Adam, this other person is giving me butterflies. This must mean something. We're meant to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then when you calm down, you're not as anxious anymore. You're 7-8 dates in, all of a sudden you're like, I'm bored. I feel comfortable. Where are the butterflies? Where's the anxiety? They're still attractive. You can ask people this question, like, you think they're still attractive, right? Yeah, they're attractive. I just don't feel the butterflies. You don't feel the anxiety.
I think this conversation topic will be mind-blowing for listeners, because I do think we attribute so much to the feeling of they don't give me butterflies or they do, and then when things start to settle down in a relationship, it's like, where did the spark go? Where did the chemistry go? Your favorite word, Adam. Adam doesn't like chemistry, the concept.
I love chemistry, both the science of it and the experience of it. I just would not encourage anyone to hinge their romantic relationship choices on it, because it's going to fluctuate. I will say that the thing that I have the hardest time getting across to people is the fundamental biases baked into all of us, because I think that going through a PhD program in psychology, you learn just how flawed almost all of our brain systems are. Our memory is flawed. Our perception is flawed and biased. Our Emotions end up being heavily influenced by all of those biases. Our interpretations are biased. Our histories are biased. Our plans are biased. Everything is biased. That's one of the most foundational things I could say about humans. And I think if you haven't gone through the experience of years and years and years of having that drilled in your head, then what your brain is doing is it's giving you a very cohesive experience of the world. But that itself is a lie. And it's hard to convince the layperson that what they are themselves experiencing might not be true.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to wrap your mind around that idea, though.
Yeah. But as a simple point of like entry to this idea that what you are perceiving may not be true, you know, you have a blind spot in both eyes. Everybody does.
Whoa.
There's a little point in each eye where essentially the way that light comes in, it hits the retina in the back of your eye, but it got through evolution essentially. The wiring wasn't where like the retina is on the outside and then the tracks coming off of the retina go straight back. It got kind of built backward evolutionarily, which means that all of the neurons need to kind of push forward and be anterior. They go forward and then they cut back, which means essentially like if you're trying to run a power cable across a sidewalk, at some point it needs to cross the sidewalk, or in this case, it needs to cut across the retina and go back into your skull. And because of that, there's a little spot in your retina on both sides of your eye. Dissect an eye and you'll see this. Please have the other person's consent before you dissect an eye. But dissect an eye and you'll see this, that there's a point at which the optic nerve essentially starts to run back into the eye, which means there's a point on each retina that isn't receiving data from the world. Now, why don't I see a little black dot on each eye? Your brain just fills it in. It lies to you. It just lies to you. It guesses at whatever general information is over there and it just papers over.
Whoa.
And you can make it do that. There's this there's a way you can find this on some YouTube channels. If you put a small dot on a blank white piece of paper and you position it just right, that black dot will disappear and you'll just see a white paper, because your brain is like, white paper over there, I'll just fill it in. Your perceptions are a lie.
Whoa. I feel like that just goes into a deeper conversation of like, well, then what do we know to be true and all this stuff. But getting back to this client, I wonder, so you think what's a little bit of what's going on here is like, once the relationship with these people that this person is dating, the fear goes down, there's not the same level of excitement and butterflies and chemistry, or
yeah, what are you going to feel? All of these people are good people, they said. They're all great. So what am I going to feel? Calm, safe, quiet, bored?
Yeah.
Oh no, bored. If you talk to people that have been married, happily married for a long period of time, they aren't telling you that these marriages are, you know, like we skip pebbles and dance in meadows all day long either. We get irritated with each other. We lose track of each other. We get in big fights. But also sometimes we're just bored. We don't really know what to do. And, you know, we sit there and we're like, we spend an hour scrolling through whatever streaming platform, lose track of the time, never really pick a movie and go to bed. And we're like, oh, what? You know, life can be a bit boring sometimes. Marriages can be a bit boring sometimes. But if you talk to them, these happily married, long-term relationships, the majority of the time, the really stable ones, the people displaying that secure attachment, but he's there for me. He's not going anywhere. I trust him, and I'm not going anywhere. I don't need him to entertain me all the time. I don't need him to scare me all the time. I don't need those butterflies. I need stability, which means I'm going to have to confront myself in the way that I make my own relationships unstable, as all of us do. I don't want to do that any more than I think anybody else does. I don't want to face the ways that I make my own relationships unstable, but I do. Everybody does, in some small ways. It's just a matter of degree and um, and the specifics of how exactly we do that, and then what we do to kind of counteract that.
Yeah, I think that was another big revelation in dating group, this idea of like a good relationship can be boring, and that's okay, and it's not like a red flag that this relationship isn't the one for you. Because I think that's often the thing. It's like, oh my god, I'm bored with this person, I'm not feeling the same level of like excitement or even attraction as I did at the very beginning. And so what does that mean? It's like, it doesn't have to mean anything.
Right, because your feelings can't reveal truths about the world. They're stuck in your head, and also they're biased.
Right.
By your histories, by your perceptions, which are a lie. So maybe we should throw on the docket a conversation about how to pick a good match if you can't just follow the butterflies in chemistry.
I think that would be a really good conversation topic for those of you in the dating pool right now, because it is hard. It is hard to know like what to look for and what to focus on if it's not, you know, those feelings of attraction solely. Yeah. Anything else you would tell this Redditor before we wrap up this question?
There was a line about something like it is easier to just be alone.
Mm.
No, it didn't. That's why you're posting on Reddit. It's harder in a slower kind of way.
Yeah. And you've also made it clear in this post that that's not what you want. You want a long-term partnership. That is something that you're craving. And so I'd imagine while being alone doesn't come with, you know, the difficulties and the mechanics of dating and relationships, it would come with a lot of feelings of being without a partner that you want so badly, you know, being one of your big goals in life.
Which you get to decide. You get to decide whether that's a goal. Another conversation we already have on the docket is how to be truly a solo entity without a romantic partnership, if that's what you choose. You can choose that, and there's a way to do it. Mm-hmm. But it's, as you correctly point out, Allie, it's really, what do you want? What are you trying to accomplish? And how do we go about doing it, regardless of what we're feeling? Mm-hmm. I will also say, as always with these Reddit questions, we don't know this person. We didn't get a chance to talk with them. We didn't get a chance to ask any questions about their history or their backstory. As you also indicated, I think that's a great place to start. Like, how did this a particular approach to dating come to be? Is a really, really great place to start, because we would learn things immediately, both of us, and that would change the trajectory of how we would talk about every single part of this.
Absolutely. Well, Adam, it seems like we only get through one of these questions each time because they just have so much to say. They're so multifaceted.
Yeah, you're picking some really great questions that have so much nuance to them.
Thank you. I'm trying. So your new quote on your board: angry is the second thing that happens. Ooh, I love this. What comes to mind for me is I typically find angry is more of like a secondary emotion. Typically there's something underneath that. You're either like deeply hurt or feeling betrayed or, you know, lonely, or there's a primary emotion under that. And angry is what comes out of the primary emotion. That's just my initial thoughts on this quote.
I think you did it. I think that's exactly it. Yeah. And, you know, one's embarrassment, for instance, is likely to turn into anger, because if I can blame you for my embarrassment, then I don't have to deal with my own embarrassment. And frankly, in the US, in modern day society, we don't teach people how to deal with their embarrassment. We don't teach people how to deal with their heavy, hardcore primary emotions. So it often gets turned into anger. And when I ask clients to tell me what they're feeling, they'll often tell me what they're thinking, what criticism they have for the other person. And if I get them to stop doing that, they'll start saying like, "Oh, I'm angry." I'm like, "That's a secondary emotion. What are you actually feeling toward yourself?" And then they'll say frustrated, irritated, irritable. I'm like, "That's all the same thing." Those are all the same words. Basically, you're just picking synonyms. It's hard to even see what I myself on my own within my own world am experiencing for myself. It's hard to even see the embarrassment or the fear.
Yeah. I imagine also it's harder to face those deeper, more primary emotions rather than just dealing with the anger piece. So I understand why people tend to just focus on the anger part of it. But yeah,
Absolutely. And anger's not a bad thing, by the way. In
no,
fact, sometimes angry is the correct response to whatever the circumstance and the emotions are. I would want people to be as aware of their primary emotions as possible while they maybe choose angry as often as they can with intention. Choose with intention, not choose angry as often as you can, but choose with intention. And if the choice happens to be anger, that's okay. You can be angry, and there's a healthy way to be angry.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Adam, for our conversation today. I really enjoyed it. We'll definitely get to more Reddit questions in the future because I find a lot of them are really juicy and also really relatable to a wider audience. So we'll keep doing them because they seem to be popular as well with what people are liking from our podcast. Thanks everyone for tuning in. As always, at Delve, we offer individual, couples, family, group therapy. So if you'd like to reach out for consultation, reach out at delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. And also check out our Substack. We have a lot of interesting, juicy blog topics on there at delvepsych.substack.com.
Thank you so much, Allie.
Thank you, Adam. We'll see you next week.
I'm going to go meet those students.
Yay!
Bye.
Bye.